It is said that there are places where the wind still remembers, where at the edge of dawn the air grows heavy with the scent of dust and memory. And if one stands long enough in that trembling silence, the past begins to stir beneath the soil. The steppe stretches endlessly before you, its golden skin rippling under the breath of morning. There are no markers here, no monuments left to guide the way, and only whispers faint as the hum of distant stars. Yet somewhere beneath these shifting sands lie the bones of a forgotten empire, the vast and vanished realm that some once called Tartaria. No map dares to name it now, but the earth remembers. In the first light, you see them, faint ridges breaking the horizon, the buried outlines of walls that once held dominion over continents. The towers rise only to the height of your breath now, worn smooth by centuries of wind, yet their foundations stretch deeper than imagination allows. They say these were cities that dreamed in stone, their spires carved not for war or wealth, but to mirror the stars. The builders, whoever they were, believed that heaven and earth were two halves of the same mirror, and that to understand one was to awaken the other. Listen closely. The air hums softly around you, as though the stones themselves are exhaling, remembering their own creation. Each grain of sand, each broken pillar, holds the memory of voices that spoke in lost geometries, languages made of light and rhythm rather than sound. Perhaps it was here, beneath the silver arc of the sky, that the first cities learned to dream. Some believe Tartaria was not born in war but in reverence. Its rulers, if rulers they could be called, were said to have governed not by crown or sword but by alignment, by harmony. They built in rhythm with celestial laws, constructing their cities along the breath of the earth itself. Even now, when the wind moves across the plain, it traces invisible patterns, spirals, circles, sacred proportions. The design remains though the builders are gone. Imagine vast plazas paved in white stone shining under twin moons, rivers flowing in deliberate spirals to feed gardens that grew in perfect measure, towers that rose not to dominate the heavens but to sing with them, each structure an echo of the stars above, a reflection of divine order rendered into form. And at the heart of it all, the thrones. Not one, as legend insists, but many. Thrones carved of unyielding stone, each marked by a sigil lost to time. They say these seats were not symbols of power, but of guardianship, that those who sat upon them were bound not to rule men, but to protect the balance between earth and sky. Yet something changed. Something always changes. In the stillness of centuries, stories scatter like ashes in the wind. The scholars who came after tried to name this place, tried to fit it into the narrow corridors of recorded time, but the ruins defied their measure. The architecture spoke of mathematics older than Egypt. Carvings hinted at symbols seen nowhere else on Earth. One chronicler, long forgotten, wrote of domes that shimmered with silver constellations, still faintly visible even after 1,000 years. Of murals that depicted continents arranged differently, oceans where deserts now lie. He spoke of an empire that spanned not just space, but epochs, as if Tartaria were less a kingdom, and more a memory the world itself once had. And then his account, too, disappeared, burned, buried, forgotten. All that remains are echoes, fragments of a story too vast for history to hold. Walk further now. The day has softened and the air carries a quiet warmth. Beneath your feet, fragments of pottery gleam like stars fallen into the earth. Some are etched with swirling lines, others with gentle curves that seem almost to breathe. You lift one shard and feel its surface, smooth, impossibly fine. It hums faintly in your hand, as though some residual energy lingers within it. Could it be that these people knew something we have since unlearned? Could it be that they built with intention so pure that even time could not erase the vibration of their purpose? Whispers tell us that Tartaria's fall was not destruction, but dissolution, that it faded quietly like a song reaching its final note. The thrones were left empty, the cities surrendered to silence. No wars marked its end, no fire consumed its walls. Instead, it is said the people simply walked away. Some vanished into forests, others crossed oceans. A few perhaps became the ancestors of civilizations we think we understand. But Tartaria itself, the great harmonic empire, folded back into the breath of the world, leaving behind only the faint outline of its dreaming. As the sun begins to lower, shadows stretch across the ruins like threads of forgotten thought. You rest beside a fallen column, its surface covered in strange indentations, neither letters nor symbols, but patterns that pulse with strange familiarity. You trace them with your finger, and for a moment you feel warmth as though the stone recognizes your touch. It is then that you hear it, a sound so faint you almost mistake it for the wind. A rhythm, a low hum rising from deep beneath the earth. Perhaps it is only your imagination, or perhaps the stones are remembering their song. It is said that Tartarian builders could make stone sing, that their architecture resonated with frequencies aligned to the heart of the planet. Their temples were not built for worship, but as worship. The hum you hear is the faintest echo of that prayer, a vibration that has survived empires, languages, and time itself. You close your eyes. The air thickens. You can almost see it, where a city awakening from dust, towers unfurling beneath the moon, streets alive with soft luminescence. The air thrums with music not of instruments but of alignment, the deep, wordless harmony of a world in balance. Then, as suddenly as it came, the vision fades. Only the wind remains whispering through the hollow corridors of memory. Night descends quietly, wrapping the landscape in blue shadow. The stars emerge, first one, then 1,000, their light shimmering upon the broken stones. In their glow, the ruins take on new life. Every edge softens, every shadow deepens, until it feels as though the city itself is breathing once more. Half dreaming beneath the constellations it once mirrored, it is easy to believe, in moments like this, that time is not linear, that history is less a line and more a circle, endlessly returning, endlessly rediscovering itself. Perhaps Tartaria was never truly lost. Perhaps it exists in the pauses between centuries, in the dreams of those who still remember harmony, even if they cannot name it. There is a gentle ache in that thought, the ache of beauty too vast to be contained by memory. Beneath the constellations you begin to walk again. The silence is not empty now, but full of unseen presence, full of the soft hum of things both ancient and eternal. The air smells of dust and distant rain. Each breath feels older than language, and then you see it. A single throne half buried in shadow. Its surface is worn smooth by centuries of wind, yet its form remains unmistakable. A seat not for a ruler, but for a guardian. The moonlight spills across its face, revealing a faint carving at its center. A circle within a circle, perfectly balanced, perfectly still. You reach out to touch it. The stone is cool, but alive beneath your palm. For an instant you feel a pulse, slow, rhythmic, as though the earth itself is breathing through it. Perhaps it is only imagination, or perhaps in this silent hour the throne remembers. The wind rises once more, carrying with it a fine mist of dust. It swirls around you, gentle as breath, veiling the ruins in silver haze. You can no longer tell where sky ends and stone begins. The step stretches outward into infinity, and you realize this place was never meant to be found. Tartaria lives not in maps or ruins, but in the spaces between our remembering. It lingers in the resonance of beauty, in the quiet harmony the soul feels when gazing upon the stars. The dust begins to settle. The night grows deep, and as your eyes close, the whisper returns. Soft, patient, eternal. It is the voice of forgotten thrones, speaking not in words, but in stillness, a reminder that no empire ever truly vanishes. It only falls asleep, waiting for someone to listen once more. Perhaps it was never lost at all, the wind seems to say. Perhaps it only turned to dust, so it could become the stars. It begins with a whisper, the faint sound of paper stirring in an empty room. The candlelight trembles, casting long shadows over a desk covered in dust, and there, beneath the flicker of flame, lies a single parchment, browned with age, its corners curling like the petals of a dying flower. They say it was found in a monastery where even the monks had forgotten its origin. No one knew who placed it there, nor why it had been hidden behind the altar, wrapped in linen, sealed with wax long melted by centuries of quiet waiting. The first to unroll it did so with reverence, as though unveiling a relic rather than a map. And in truth it was not quite either, for under the trembling flame, its lines seemed to shift, slow, deliberate, breathing. It is said the map was drawn not with ink, but with memory, At first glance, it appeared simple: faint coastlines, mountain ranges, delicate rivers. But when the light moved, so too did the shapes. Seas rippled across parchment like sighs of the divine. Continents shifted, dissolving into others. Islands appeared and faded as though recalling dreams long forgotten by the waking world. One scholar swore he saw a city, a vast, shining geometry in the center of a land no chart had ever known. Another claimed the map pulsed faintly beneath his fingers as if responding to touch. Each who studied it saw something different. To one, it revealed an empire that once ruled the north. To another, a continent now swallowed by ocean. To some, the map was nothing at all, only faint stains and lines, the work of age and imagination. Yet every man left changed, haunted by something that could not be unseen. Under candlelight, the map lives. Its texture glows faintly gold, as though something sleeps beneath the parchment, something that does not wish to be woken too quickly. When traced with the fingertip, the lines feel warm, almost alive, as if drawn by a steady pulse rather than by hand. Those who dared to study its geometry noticed something impossible. Every curve, every line, obeyed a hidden rhythm, spirals, circles, proportions that matched not only the human body, but the very paths of stars. The map, they whispered, was written in the language of the cosmos, and perhaps it was never meant to guide the traveler through space, but through time. In forgotten archives of St. Petersburg, a monk once recorded that the map was older than the flood, older than the moon's reflection upon water. He claimed it came from a civilization that knew the world not as divided, not as east or west, above or below, but as a single living organism, breathing in endless cycles. He wrote of Tartaria, that elusive empire that appears nowhere yet everywhere in the annals of history. Some call it myth, others the erased chapter of humankind. But in this map, he said, Tartaria breathes again. Look closer. Between the trembling lines of latitude and myth, you may see its outlines, cities marked by symbols older than language, rivers that flow backward as if memory itself were reversing, mountains arranged in patterns that mirror constellations no longer visible in our sky, and there at the heart of it, a circle of light. Not a sun nor a city, something else. A point of convergence, the breath between worlds. Whispers tell us the map was not drawn to show where Tartaria was, but when. Its landscapes are not fixed, but fluid. Their edges curling like thought, their shapes fading like recollection. Each coastline, each forest, a reflection of the world's shifting dream. For what if, they wondered, the earth does not move through time, but time moves through the earth? Perhaps Tartaria was never a civilization lost to history, but one that lived in a different rhythm of reality, parallel, adjacent, overlapping with our own like faint echoes of a melody we no longer hear. Those who gazed too long upon the map began to dream strangely. Some spoke of endless plains where silver rivers flowed toward mirrored skies. Others described towers of luminous stone, and temples that rang like bells when the wind passed through their halls. They would wake trembling, uncertain if the dreams were memories or if the map itself was dreaming through them. It is said that one night, a scholar left the map open under the full moon. When morning came, the parchment was cool to the touch, but the ink had changed. Faint traces of light lingered where none had been before. Tiny dots now glimmered along the edges, forming what appeared to be constellations, and among them, unfamiliar stars, stars unseen from Earth. He wrote, before vanishing himself, that he believed the map was a recording of the heavens as they once were, long before the sky was rewritten. He believed Tartaria had mapped not the land, but the symmetry of creation itself. If that were true, then every line, every curve, was a reflection, the earth dreaming of the stars, and the stars dreaming of the earth. Some say that in a quiet room under low light. If one breathes gently over the parchment, the surface shimmers, faintly, like the ripple of moonlight on still water. In that shimmer, one can almost hear the sound of oceans folding, the murmur of forgotten languages, the echo of voices calling across centuries. Perhaps this is why it was said to be drawn with memory. For memory, too, shifts with the light. Every mark, every symbol, every fading curve, all seem to hold the weight of lives once lived, of cities once breathing, of songs once sung beneath skies now lost to the turning of the earth. It is not a map one can follow, but a map that follows you. As if the parchment itself remembers the touch of every hand that ever held it, and adjusts its lines to mirror the dream of whoever dares to look. A traveler once claimed to have carried it across the desert, tucked inside his coat close to his heart. He said that at night, when the stars emerged, he would take it out and unroll it upon the sand. And there, beneath the great silence of the cosmos, the map would shimmer faintly, as though drawing breath from the heavens. He spoke of seeing patterns unfold that no compass could chart, spirals of light, delicate as frost, weaving across its surface. He swore that at its center, he saw movement, continents breathing, expanding, contracting, like lungs beneath skin. He never found his way home again. But long after he vanished, the map reappeared and folded neatly, untouched by time, placed upon a wooden table in a monastery that had no record of his name, as if it had simply walked back. "What if," whispered one monk, "the map does not show the world as it was, but as it remembers itself to be? What if this parchment is the earth's own reflection, a living document that adjusts with the rhythm of time, marking the rise and fall of civilizations as naturally as the tide marks the shore?" He believed the lines that shift across its surface are not mistakes, but memories, the world's own recollection of its many selves. And if one looks long enough, he said, one might glimpse not just what has been, but what will be. For memory and prophecy, like dawn and dusk, are two faces of the same light. The candle has burned low now. The map rests before you, its surface quiet once more. The air carries the faint scent of wax and ash. You lean closer, tracing the faint shimmer of its lines. And as your eyes soften, you begin to see movement again, but this time, the movement is within you. It is as though the map has turned inward, continents unfolding behind your eyelids, rivers winding through memory, mountains rising along the horizon of thought. The map breathes through you now, each heartbeat echoing its ancient rhythm. You realize in the stillness of that moment that perhaps this is what the parchment always intended, not to show you the way to Tartaria, but to awaken it within you. Because if every dream is a landscape, then somewhere in the silence of the soul, Tartaria still stands, its cities shimmering in starlight, its towers tuned to the music of eternity. The candle flickers once more, and the ink fades back into stillness. The map is only parchment again, only dust and memory, but in the hush that follows, the world feels slightly different, softer, older, as though it has turned its gaze toward you. It is said that the map remembers every eye that has ever looked upon it. And somewhere, beneath the fabric of the night, it dreams still, dreaming of continents, of cities that breathe in silence, of civilizations that rise not in stone, but in the soft geometry of the soul. Perhaps it was never meant to be found. Perhaps it was always meant to find us. And as you close your eyes, the map folds quietly in the dark, its edges glowing faintly, like memory returning home to sleep. It begins with a hush, a silence so deep it seems to draw the breath from the earth itself. Across the boundless plains, where the horizon stretches like an ancient sigh, stand shapes the color of faded moonlight. They rise from the grasslands like prayers cast in stone, worn smooth by 1,000 seasons of wind. At first glance, they appear as pillars, fragments of some forgotten temple. Yet as the sun drifts lower, their shadows fall in perfect rhythm, tracing patterns that seem almost deliberate, like notes upon the parchment of the world. And then, if you listen long enough, something stirs, a hum, soft and trembling, as if the air itself has begun to remember. It is said that these were not towers of defense, nor monuments to kings, but instruments, vast, resonant harps carved from the bones of the earth itself, towers that sang to the heavens. Long before empires carved their names into stone, before maps divided sky from soil, a civilization existed that built not for conquest, but for harmony. Its architects were listeners, not rulers, artisans of silence who studied the movements of the stars and the murmuring pulse of the wind. In forgotten texts, they are called the resonants, a people who believed the universe was not matter, but music, that every tree, every river, every breath of human life vibrated with sacred frequency. Their cities were tuned to the cosmos, their towers, instruments of communion. Each was raised upon a sacred point, aligned precisely with constellations that no longer bear their names. The geometry of their design followed celestial ratios, each curve and column echoing the orbits of the heavens. When the wind passed through their hollow chambers, it was said to awaken a sound that could travel beyond the veil of stars. At twilight, when the air grows still, travelers speak of hearing that sound even now, a low, aching note like a voice calling through eternity. Some say it is only the wind. Others swear it carries intention, as though the towers are still trying to speak. Once these melodies were not solitary. Entire landscapes would hum in unison, each tower answering the other across the plain. From mountain to sea, a symphony of stone and sky filled the night. It was said that the earth itself would tremble gently in reply, not in destruction, but in resonance. Those who listened deeply could feel it in their bones, the pulse of the world beneath their feet, the heartbeat of creation. Scholars of later ages dismissed such tales as myth. They called the towers primitive observatories, watchtowers, remnants of forgotten religions. But the old songs, one carried through generations by nomads and wanderers, tell something different. They speak of healers who once climbed the spiral paths of these towers, their robes shimmering in moonlight. There at the summit, they would place their hands upon the cold stone and sing, not in words but in tones, long, sustained notes that merged with the breath of the tower itself. And when they did, the tower would answer. It would vibrate softly like a tuning fork struck by divine hand. The sound would flow outward, unseen but felt, carried upon the air for miles. It was said that this music could mend what was broken, in body, in mind, in spirit. Villages claimed that the sick would dream of light during those nights, waking whole again by morning. Crops would grow stronger, rain would fall gently upon fields, and those who had quarreled would find peace without knowing why. The resonants believed that sound was the first language of the universe. That creation itself began not with flame, but with tone, the song that brought matter into being. Their towers were built to remember that song. Whispers tell us there was once a grand tower, the tallest of them all, standing in the heart of their empire, where the plains met the mountains. It rose higher than any structure known to man, carved from stone that shimmered faintly blue under starlight. They called it the breath of heaven. When the solstice came, and the sun stood at its stillest, the tower would awaken. Its shadows would stretch across the plains, touching each of its sister towers in sequence, as though passing a note along an invisible scale. The people would gather below, silent, heads bowed, waiting for the wind to arrive. When it did, it would sing. A single note, clear as glass, deep as thunder. It would rise slowly, spiral upward, until even the stars seemed to pause in their orbits to listen. They said that, in that moment, all hearts beat in the same rhythm. All minds quieted. The world itself stood perfectly still, and then, softly, the note would fade. The plains would return to silence. But for days afterward, the air would hum with its memory. Faint, like the aftertaste of eternity. What became of the towers no one knows. Some believe a great silence fell upon the world, a change in the frequency of the earth itself, caused by human noise, by iron, by war. The resonants may have felt the harmony slipping away, their sacred geometry no longer aligned with the shifting heavens. So they stopped singing, and without song the towers fell asleep. Others claim the towers were destroyed, toppled by conquerors who feared their power. But if so, the earth reclaimed them with grace. Their ruins still hum faintly when the wind moves through their hollow cores, as though some fragment of their purpose endures. A few stand whole even now, hidden in valleys or forgotten deserts. Travelers tell of entering one at dusk, the air inside cool, the stone smooth beneath their hands. When they breathe, the chamber seems to breathe back. Every sound, every movement, every whisper becomes music. Some have fainted inside those walls. Some have left in tears. Beneath the silence of centuries, there lingers a truth too gentle to prove. The towers were never merely structures. They were living bridges between matter and melody, body and soul. When they sang, they did not reach upward to the gods. They reached inward, into the memory of the earth, into the song that still hums beneath every grain of dust. The resonants believed that to build was to participate in creation. To tune stone was to tune the self, and when they vanished, the harmony of the world fractured. The great hum of being fell out of key. We built other towers, taller, sharper, louder. But they do not sing. On certain nights, when the air is perfectly still, wanderers say they can hear it again, faintly, far away, like a dream half remembered. A vibration in the chest, a sound at the edge of perception. Some mistake it for the wind, others for the sea. But those who listen, truly listen, know it is older than both. It is the song of the towers. The breath of an age when stone spoke softly to the stars. If you close your eyes now, you might hear it too. A single note lingering in the stillness between heartbeats. It moves through you, through the air, through the endless plane of memory. It does not ask to be understood, only felt. As night descends, the plains darken into a vast sea of shadow. The towers stand silent, their pale faces bathed in starlight. The wind has quieted. The earth has settled. For a moment, you imagine what it must have been like to stand here thousands of years ago when the sky itself was alive with sound, to feel the music pass through you, dissolving all boundaries between self and world. Perhaps the towers are not truly silent even now. Perhaps they are only waiting for the world to fall quiet again, for our noise to fade, for our hearts to remember their original rhythm, because somewhere beneath this endless night, the earth is still singing. We have only forgotten how to hear. The stars begin to shimmer brighter, as if stirred by the same invisible melody. The plain glows faintly, a soft silver breath moving across the land. And as your eyes grow heavy, you imagine the towers awakening once more, their song rising slowly, gently, to cradle the sky. The wind shifts. The note fades. Only silence remains, vast, sacred, eternal. And in that silence, a thought drifts softly through you. Perhaps they never stopped singing at all. Perhaps we are the ones who fell out of tune. In the farthest reaches of the world, where the horizon is a blur between sky and snow, there is a silence that feels eternal. The wind moves, but it does not speak. The light shifts, but it does not warm. And beneath that veil of white, older than memory, colder than death, it is said something sleeps. A library, not of stone or wood or firelight, but of ice. Its corridors carved into the frozen heart of the earth, its shelves shimmering with the breath of time itself. Whispers tell us that it lies beyond the northern lights and in a place where compasses falter and sound itself slows. Some call it myth, others a mirage of the mind. Yet a few, the rare few who dared to follow the old maps north, vanished into that frozen silence, leaving behind only fragments, a torn page, a broken lens, a compass needle locked in endless tremor. What were they seeking? What could compel a soul to walk into that eternal night? Perhaps it was the promise that somewhere beneath the ice, the past still dreams. It is said that when the auroras first appeared, ribbons of green and violet unfurling across the heavens, they marked the ceiling of that hidden sanctuary. The sky itself became a reflection of the halls below, each wave of light echoing off frozen vaults that once held the wisdom of a forgotten age. Those who speak of it do so in hushed tones, as if the very act of remembering might disturb it. For in this place, knowledge is not written. It is preserved in the purest form. Crystals of translucent ice, each one containing an image, a voice, a memory. Scholars once claimed that if you could hold such a shard to your ear, you might hear entire civilizations whispering within it, languages not yet born, and histories not yet lived. Beneath the silence, the ice remembers. The old tales say that the library was built, or perhaps found, by the last scholars of Tartaria. When their empire began to fade and the great cities sank beneath dust and flood, they turned northward. There they sought refuge not from enemies, but from oblivion itself. They feared not death, but forgetting. And so they gathered what they could: scrolls of celestial maps, treatises on the music of the spheres, codices that described how sound could bend light and memory could shape stone. They sealed them not in vaults of gold, but in chambers of ice, and believing that cold, unlike flame, would preserve purity. It was not a library for the living, but for the future. There are stories, strange, flickering things, of those who stumbled upon traces of it. Explorers in the 19th century who spoke of hearing breathing beneath the ice, a slow rhythmic pulse as though something vast and sleeping lay below. Others found shards, translucent fragments etched with symbols that seemed to shift when touched. One explorer, whose name is lost but whose journal survived, wrote this: "I placed my hand upon the glacier and heard a voice not in sound but in thought. It said only this: 'Remember what was never known.' Then the ice cracked beneath me." He was never seen again. Some believe that the library still exists, preserved by the cold, its corridors glowing faintly with blue light. They say that deep within, there are rooms so vast that the air itself seems to hum. Rows of crystalline shelves stretch into infinity, holding the memory of an entire civilization, knowledge so complete it needed no language to convey it. Each crystal, a soul; each corridor, a thought; each flake of frost, a heartbeat paused in eternity. Others suggest that it was never a place at all, but an idea, a myth born of longing. That the library beneath the ice is not buried in the Arctic, but in the human mind, where frozen layers of memory hide truths too ancient to bear. Perhaps both are true. It is said that during the long polar night, when the sun disappears for months and the auroras dance without rest, the veil grows thin. Some wanderers claim that in the distance they've seen lights flicker beneath the ice, not reflections of the sky, but something moving from within. They describe tall shadows gliding through corridors of translucent frost, as though the librarians of Tartaria still walk, tending to their endless archives. Their faces, if they have faces, are veiled in frost. Their eyes are stars dimmed by time. They do not speak, for all speech has frozen, but they listen. Always they listen, and if you stand perfectly still, they say you can feel it. The vibration of countless thoughts suspended just beneath your feet. The air hums with quiet expectancy, as if the ice itself is waiting for something, or someone, to awaken it. The deeper one imagines, the colder it becomes. The library is not merely a tomb of knowledge, it is a mirror of the universe's memory. Every civilization that has ever risen or fallen leaves an imprint here, frozen into the crystalline veins that wind through the earth's crust. Even our own thoughts, our dreams, the words we speak into the dark, perhaps they too drift northward, carried by unseen winds, to settle within that endless frost. Some mystics call it the memory field of the world. Others name it the breath between time. But in every tongue, the meaning is the same. Nothing truly vanishes. It only sleeps. Beneath the silence, the ice sings, not in melody, but in vibration, a sound too slow for the ear, too deep for the air. Scientists have measured it, calling it glacial resonance, but the old stories say it is something else. The song of remembrance, still humming through the bones of the earth. Perhaps that is why the northern lights shimmer as they do, not merely as solar fire, but as echoes of that hidden song refracted through the heavens. When you watch them dance, you are seeing memory itself, ancient thought made visible, wisdom flickering across the cold fabric of night. No one knows if Tartaria's scholars ever intended for the library to be found again. Perhaps it was meant as a message for another age, a gift to a world that would one day remember how to listen, or perhaps it was a farewell, an offering to time, given freely to the ice so that no single hand could hoard it. It is said that before the final doors closed, one of the architects placed a single sphere of pure glass in the heart of the library. Within it he sealed not words but silence, the perfect stillness between breaths, the space where meaning is born. Whoever breaks that sphere, the legend says, will awaken the memory of all things, and so it waits. The explorers who never returned, perhaps they found it. Perhaps they stood beneath its frozen arches, gazing upon knowledge older than the stars. Perhaps they saw what no mind was meant to see. The vast design of existence, the symmetry of beginning and end reflected in ice so clear, it seemed made of light. Maybe that is why they did not come back. Maybe once you have seen truth in its rawest form, there is no returning to warmth or to words. Or maybe in that glacial stillness, they became part of the library itself. Their thoughts crystallized, their breath turned to frost, their memories preserved among the shelves. If you listen closely on the coldest nights, when the wind falls silent, you might hear them still. Faint whispers beneath the snow, like pages turning slowly in the dark. And so the library beneath the ice remains, unseen, unspoken, waiting beneath the world's frozen crown. Perhaps it holds the final truth of Tartaria. Perhaps it holds something older still, the blueprint of creation, the echo of a time when all knowledge was one. Or perhaps it is simply the Earth's own dream, the memory of itself, sleeping beneath its own skin. We may never know, for the path to the north grows colder each year, and the ice deepens its silence. But in that silence there is beauty, and in that beauty, the faint shimmer of something sacred, as if wisdom itself is breathing softly beneath the frost, waiting for the warmth of rediscovery. When you close your eyes tonight, imagine it. The auroras ripple above, green and violet and gold. The snow glows faintly with their light. Beneath your feet, corridors spiral downward into endless twilight, and in every chamber knowledge sleeps, perfect and untouched. The air grows still. The cold feels almost kind. You place your hand upon the ice, and for a moment it feels alive, a pulse beneath your palm, slow and steady, like the heartbeat of the world. Perhaps it was never meant to be found. Perhaps it is enough to know that it exists, somewhere beyond sight, keeping the memory of what once was and what might be again, beneath the silence, beneath the stars, beneath the endless dreaming ice. In the soft hush of night, beneath a silver moon that seems older than memory, there are ruins that breathe. Their stones do not sleep. They hum faintly, as though remembering motion. It begins as a murmur beneath the wind, so subtle you might mistake it for the earth exhaling. But if you linger, if you let silence cradle your breath, you will feel it. A vibration, deep and tender, running through the ancient ground. Some call it the echo of an empire. Others say it is the sound of forgotten engines, machines that once drew light from the soul of the world. And somewhere, within that trembling quiet, the memory of Tartaria flickers, not as history, but as a pulse. It is said that across the vast plains of the vanished empire, towers and halls were once adorned not only with gold or stone, but with instruments of impossible grace, gears that turned without pressure, orbs of metal so pure they mirrored the sky, pillars that glowed faintly in the dark, breathing light without flame. Those who unearthed fragments of them could not explain their design. The tools bore no welds, no seams, no signs of mortal craftsmanship. The materials themselves resisted decay, as though time had agreed to spare them. And beneath the moon, when the air grew still, some swore they heard the faint hum again, like the memory of power sleeping in the bones of the earth. Scholars dismissed it as imagination, but wanderers, poets, and dreamers felt otherwise. They said the hum was not a sound, but a resonance, the earth remembering a harmony once shared between matter and spirit. Tartaria, they whispered, had built its wonders not on conquest or fire, but on song. Imagine for a moment a city where technology was prayer, where the great domes were tuned to the frequencies of the heavens, where copper lines spiraled like veins through marble corridors, not to carry heat or flame, but light, where every chamber sang softly, a tone so pure it seemed to cleanse the air itself. In those cities, it is said, the machines were not separate from the people. They were companions, guardians of the sacred flow between the human heart and the pulse of creation. Power was never taken. It was received, and in that receiving, there was reverence. Some fragments found in forgotten soil show patterns no one can decipher, spirals within spirals, etched into bronze plates as thin as leaves. When light strikes them, the patterns seem to move, as though the metal itself remembers a rhythm lost to time. One plate, held beneath candlelight, reveals a faint geometric bloom, lines radiating from a single point pulsing like breath. It is not ornament nor random art, it feels alive. Could these have been the keys? Instruments of sacred resonance, meant to draw harmony from the hidden frequencies of the earth. Whispers tell us that the ancients of Tartaria believed the world was not solid, but fluid, a vast ocean of sound and light intertwined. They learned to swim in that ocean, to guide its currents, to shape stone and sky through vibration, through prayer, through sound. There are ruins where no torch will burn, not because the air is thin, but because the walls themselves seem to shimmer with a quiet energy, as though rejecting the crude glow of fire. In one such ruin, deep within the steppes, a hollow sphere was found, its surface smooth, flawless, untarnished by time. When touched, it emitted a low tone like the chime of a great bell heard through water. No mechanism could explain it. No source of power could be found, and yet the sound lingered, deep, sonorous, sacred. Perhaps it was a fragment of the machines of sacred light, relics of a time when knowledge and faith were one. Breath. Some believe Tartaria mastered what we now call free energy, but their machines were not engines as we know them. They were temples, built upon sacred geometry, aligned with celestial patterns. Their purpose was not domination, but balance. The ancients drew from the breath of the world itself, the electromagnetic pulse of the earth, the gentle hum that underlies every heartbeat and every wave. When they built, they listened. When they created, they sang. Every tower was tuned to a note, every dome to a resonance, and together the cities formed a symphony. In their music, light was born, and that light was pure. The orbs of polished metal found buried beneath ruins are said to pulse faintly under the moon, as though responding to its light. The elders called them hearts of the sky. It is said that once these orbs were placed upon altars, each one harmonized to a star. When the wind passed through the city, the air would vibrate and a luminous mist would rise, not from smoke or fire, but from harmony itself. To live within such a city must have been like dwelling inside a heartbeat. Every breath in tune with the cosmos, every wall alive with soundless prayer. But what became of such light? What happens to a civilization that learns to live in balance with the pulse of creation? Some say the harmony became too perfect, that the boundary between matter and spirit thinned until their cities began to fade, dissolving into the very light they once summoned. Others whisper that the machines of sacred light were silenced, buried beneath stone and dust by those who feared what they could not understand. The resonance, once so natural, was broken, and in that breaking the world grew heavy again. The hum fell silent. The stars lost their song. There are old accounts, half legend, half confession, of travelers who, on still nights, have felt the vibration return. One described it as standing within a heartbeat. Another said the air itself began to shimmer, and the ruins around him glowed faintly, each stone tracing the outline of an invisible design. He wrote that for a moment, he felt weightless, as if gravity had forgotten him, as if he had stepped between worlds. Then the light faded, and the silence that followed felt ancient and kind. He said it was not power that he felt, but understanding, a soft knowing that everything, every particle, every thought, was part of one great breath. Perhaps that was the true gift of Tartaria's sacred machines, not light itself, but remembrance. A reminder that energy and spirit were never separate, that what we call technology could once be an act of devotion, not consumption. They did not build to command nature, they built to listen to it. The light they awakened was not external, but inner in the illumination of harmony. When the hum fades, it leaves a question in the air, one that lingers long after the last tone is gone. Did they vanish? Or did they ascend beyond the need for light at all? Perhaps the machines of sacred light were not destroyed but transformed, turned inward, into the hearts of those who understood. Perhaps every act of quiet awe, every breath taken in reverence of the stars, is a faint echo of their technology, a resonance still humming within the human soul. It is said that when the moon is full and the air perfectly still, one can hear it again, the faint vibration beneath the wind, not loud, not certain, but there. A song so deep it might be the earth dreaming of itself. If you place your ear to the stone, you might hear it too. A low tone, ancient and patient, weaving through the dust. You might feel it in your chest, the same pulse that beats within every living thing. And as the sound fades, you may sense what they once knew, that all creation is a single note, resonating endlessly, waiting to be remembered. Beneath the moon's pale breath, the ruins shimmer like embers caught between worlds. The hum returns, soft and distant. For a moment it feels as though the towers rise again, their domes glowing, their orbs alive with starlight. Then it passes. The wind moves. Silence returns, and you are left standing in the quiet, not empty but full, as though something vast has whispered to you and vanished. Perhaps it was never meant to be found. Perhaps it was always here beneath the skin of the world, waiting for the right silence and the right heart to hear it again. In the hour when the world is hushed, when even the wind seems to fold its wings, the moon rises, vast and pale over a plain of whispering reeds. Its light falls upon the land like spilled milk, soft and spectral, and for a moment, everything shimmers with the breath of something not quite real. It is said that on such nights, when the moon is whole and silver, a city appears, not built of stone nor carved from earth, but drawn from light itself. The elders call it Lunara, though others give it no name. They speak of its streets flowing like liquid silver, its bridges arching over rivers of mist. Temples shimmer there, mirroring constellations that no longer adorn our sky. And in the stillness, faint laughter drifts, bells chiming softly, footsteps that never touch the ground. But when the moon wanes, when its curve fades into the dark sea of night, the city fades too. Its walls dissolve. Its towers sigh into mist, and only dew remains, a quiet trace of something too perfect to stay. It is a story that belongs to the silence between heartbeats. Few have seen it. Fewer still have spoken of it. They say that travelers wandering the steppe under a full moon have stumbled upon its edge without knowing, walking from the known world into the luminous breath of another. The air there feels different, thinner, softer, humming faintly, as if the sky itself were breathing. One traveler wrote of crossing a low valley and finding himself standing before an archway woven of moonlight. Beyond it stretched streets that gleamed like the inside of a pearl. The walls were translucent, and when he passed his hand near them, they rippled, as though made not of stone but of memory. He walked for what felt like hours. Everywhere he turned, there were fountains whispering without water, lamps that burned with cold flame, and statues whose faces changed with the angle of the light. And in that still silver city, there was no sound but his own heartbeat and the faint ringing of unseen bells. Whispers tell us that this was Tartaria's final sanctuary, a refuge built not in space, but in time. A city that slipped between moments, dwelling where dream and matter merge. Perhaps it was not destroyed when the empire fell. Perhaps it simply learned to fade. There are ruins across the plains where no moss grows, no shadow lingers. Stones that seem to reflect moonlight even under cloud. In one such ruin, an ancient mosaic was found, depicting a crescent moon cradling a city of stars. Beneath it, a single inscription: "Only in fullness are we seen." Some believe it was more than a symbol, a warning perhaps, or an invitation. The scholars of the old world, curious and cautious, sought to explain it. They spoke of mirages, of reflections, of light refracting through unseen vapors. They charted the skies, mapped the patterns of the moon, and declared the tale a dream of shepherds. But the poets disagreed. They said the city was real, and that it lived not in the world, but in the rhythm between its breaths. They said that when the moon is perfect, when light and shadow stand in perfect balance, the veil thins, and for a few trembling moments another realm becomes visible. A place that hums with the resonance of forgotten harmony, a sanctuary where the lost knowledge of Tartaria still burns, unseen. It is said the people who built the moonlit city were not like us. Their hearts were tuned to subtler music, the kind that cannot be heard, only felt. They did not labor as we do, carving stone and iron. Instead, they wove with light. Their hands traced symbols through the air, and from those symbols form emerged, fragile, translucent, alive. They built temples that moved like clouds, and bridges that dissolved at dawn. Each night, under the moon's gaze, they gathered in silent courtyards to watch the reflections of unseen constellations ripple across their walls. The stars they saw were not the ones above us now. They belonged to another sky, one that has long since faded from the firmament. And perhaps, in that fading, their city followed. Some ancient scroll, half burned, half buried, speak of the covenant of light, a pact between the builders and the moon itself. It was said that as long as the moon remained whole, their city would endure untouched by decay or time. But should darkness fall upon its face, the city would recede, slipping between moments, hidden from the eyes of those who had forgotten how to see. The scrolls do not say why the covenant was broken, only that when the last full moon waned and shadow kissed its edge, the city began to shimmer, not with brilliance, but with farewell. One witness wrote, "The towers bowed as though in prayer, and the light bent inward, folding the city into itself. I reached out to touch a wall, but my hand passed through air, and where I stood, only silence remained. There are stories, always told in whispers, and of those who seek it still. Pilgrims who wander under the moon, guided by fragments of song. They say that if you follow the line of the northern wind until the world feels thin, you may find a glimmer at the horizon and a soft, trembling radiance that is not dawn, not dream, but something in between. And if you walk toward it without fear, it will not vanish. It will grow, faintly at first, then brighter until the ground itself glows beneath your feet. And suddenly you will see it, spires of moonlight, bridges of mist, and faces watching from within the glow, kind, ancient, familiar, but you must not speak. You must not reach, for to touch it is to wake. And when you wake, it will be gone. Perhaps the city was never meant to be inhabited, but remembered. Perhaps it is a reflection of what once was, the dream of an empire that learned how to live in light. Some say it is not a city at all, but a threshold, the border between the known and the eternal, a mirror through which the earth remembers its own soul. And when we gaze at the full moon, when its light silvers the quiet fields, perhaps it gazes back, whispering of what was lost, of what still waits, shimmering beyond the reach of dawn. There is a place in the desert where the sand glows faintly, as though something beneath it still remembers how to shine. Those who sleep there beneath the moon speak of strange dreams, of walking barefoot through corridors made of glass, of hearing voices call their names from afar. One dreamer said she felt tears upon her face, though she could not tell if they were hers or the city's. When she woke, she found her footprints outlined in silver dew. It is said that at the height of the moon, when its light spills across the horizon like a tide, the veil stirs. For a breath, a shimmer passes through the air, and in that shimmer, if your heart is quiet enough, you might glimpse it. A gate of light. A tower trembling like a candle flame. A sound like distant laughter or bells beneath the sea. You will blink and it will fade. But in the silence that follows, you will feel something vast, something kind, linger behind your ribs. The echo of a beauty too perfect to remain. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. And perhaps the moonlit city still waits, not beyond the horizon, but within the quiet folds of the world, where dream and remembrance intertwine. It does not need to be found. It only needs to be remembered. When the moon sets, its light gathers itself and withdraws, a tide retreating from unseen shores. The city dissolves once more into mist, into breath, into the hush of the sleeping earth. And though dawn will come, washing the plains with ordinary light, a faint shimmer remains, like the memory of wings just out of sight. Those who have seen it do not speak. They simply close their eyes when the moon is full, waiting for the whisper to return. And when it does, they smile, as though greeting something that was never gone. Perhaps Tartaria's final sanctuary did not fall, did not fade, but transcended. Perhaps it lives still, suspended between the worlds in a soft, endless reflection of what it means to belong to the light. And when the moon touches the earth once more, it will return, not as a place but as a feeling, the ache of beauty too perfect to remain, and too sacred to be lost. Beneath the moon, where memory glows and time dissolves, the city breathes again, unseen, unfading, eternal. In the heart of an endless plain, where the horizon breathes in all directions and the wind moves like an unseen choir, there runs a river no map dares to name. It moves not with haste but with ancient purpose, slow, deliberate, like a pulse too vast to belong to one age alone. By day it glimmers like tempered glass. By night it becomes a mirror for dreams. It is said that this river reflects not the sky above, but the memories buried beneath it. If you look long enough, you may see not your own reflection, but the flicker of something older, something that remembers. Some call it the veiled current. Others name it the breath of Tartaria. But among those who live near its quiet bends, it is spoken of only in whispers, for they believe the river knows names. Every name that has ever been spoken and every one that has been forgotten. It is a strange kind of water. Its flow defies the wind, curving against the land as though guided by invisible hands. No one has ever traced its full length. It seems to appear and vanish like mist or memory, re-emerging miles away as though it had stepped briefly into another world. Fishermen say that if you cast a net into its depths, you might draw up not fish, but fragments, pieces of something carved, etched, or once alive. Ivory figurines that hum when touched, coins with faces that never ruled any known kingdom, and sometimes smooth stones inscribed with letters that no scholar has ever deciphered. The river gives, but it also keeps. Those who wade too deep speak of shapes moving beneath them, soft, slow, circling. Not creatures, but memories adrift, moments waiting for someone to remember them. There is a story told by the elders of a nearby village of a boy who fell into the river one night when the moon was full. When they pulled him out, trembling and breathless, he spoke of voices that had called to him beneath the current. Not in words he understood, but in sounds that felt familiar, like hearing his own heartbeat whispered back in another tongue. For days afterward, the boy would wake at dawn and walk to the riverbank, whispering his own name into the mist. Each time he did, the water would shiver, and as though in recognition. It is said that from that night on, he could remember things he had never lived, coronations beneath golden spires, songs sung by thousands in a language that shimmered like light on bronze. When he closed his eyes, he saw a great city by the same river, its bridges gleaming, its towers adorned with sigils that pulsed like living stars. Some called it madness. Others said the river had remembered through him. There are ruins not far from its banks, scattered stones that once formed circles, altars and stairways that descend into the earth and vanish into water. Scholars claim they were temples dedicated to forgotten deities of the flood, but those who listen to the land know better. They say these were listening places, sites where the priests of Tartaria once gathered to hear the river speak. They believed the current was not mere water, but consciousness itself, flowing through worlds as blood through a body. Each ripple was a word, each eddy a thought in those ancient days. It was said the high sages could stand upon the banks at dusk, close their eyes and hear the river recite the lineage of kings, the rise and fall of cities and the songs of the unborn. The river, they said, was the spine of memory, and through it, all that ever was remained connected. There is an old verse carved into the remnants of a pillar now half swallowed by reeds. No one knows its full translation, but one fragment has been preserved. When the moon rests upon the water, the past shall look back. It is said that during the full moon, when the river gleams like quicksilver, visions appear upon its surface, not reflections but memories, figures in robes of gold and white, carrying lanterns that never dim, processions crossing bridges that no longer exist, and sometimes faces that linger just long, enough to make you whisper a name you do not remember learning. Witnesses have described standing upon the shore as the air grows thick, as if the boundary between breath and water begins to blur. For a few heartbeats, the river stops feeling like a thing outside of you and begins to move within. Your pulse aligns with its flow. Your thoughts grow quiet, and you begin to understand that it is not just remembering names, it is remembering you. Beneath the surface, it is said there are tunnels, channels carved through rock and time itself, leading to chambers filled with light that never fades. Some say this was Tartaria's final work, a library not of words but of water. Each droplet a record, each current a living archive of what the world once was. When the empire fell, its people entrusted their memory to the river, letting it carry their knowledge downstream toward the ocean of eternity. To them, water was not a force to be conquered, but a sacred vessel, a living thread between the seen and unseen. Perhaps that is why, even now it sings. At dusk, when the air turns blue and still, and the reeds lean toward the current, a faint hum can be heard. It begins low, like breath through stone, then rises until it trembles through the ribs of the earth itself. Those who have heard it say it feels like being called by name, though no sound is spoken. It is a dangerous thing to listen too long. Many have tried, and few have returned the same. There are tales of wanderers who built fires by its edge, vowing to stay awake until dawn to hear what the river would reveal. By morning, only the fire remained, but unburned, still warm, and the footprints led straight into the current. When the villagers found their packs and journals days later, they were dry, untouched, as though the water had passed around them like air. But the names of those who were lost, none could recall. It was as if the river had drawn them into its memory, keeping them as it keeps all things. Some believe that when one dies, the soul does not ascend or vanish. It simply returns to the river, flowing backward through the streams of remembrance until it reaches the source, that hidden spring from which all consciousness began. And in that spring, perhaps, waits the first name ever spoken, the one from which all others echo. On certain nights when mist coils low and the moon stretches its pale hand across the plain, travelers say the river looks almost alive, not with light, but with thought. Its surface ripples in patterns too deliberate for wind, and if you whisper your name into it, you will feel something stir in reply, a recognition, faint but certain, as though the water has turned its face toward you. It is a moment both comforting and unsettling, to know you are seen not by eyes, but by memory itself. There is a legend that one day, when the last name is forgotten, the river will cease to flow, for its journey, they say, is not toward the sea but toward silence, and when that silence is reached, all that was scattered will return. Perhaps that is what the ancients meant when they said the river carried eternity as though it were a lullaby. To them, eternity was not endless time. It was perfect remembering. If you stand upon its shore long enough, you may hear the low murmur beneath the surface, the sound of centuries folding into one another like waves. It is not language. It is resonance. It hums through the bones, the breath, the heart. It feels like recognition without knowing from where. You close your eyes and suddenly you are walking through visions. Stone avenues lined with torches that never flicker. Bridges suspended over glowing water. Voices chanting in rhythm with the current. A crown being lowered. A child being named. The soft hum of the world remembering itself. And then, silence. The moon rises higher, washing the plains in its spectral glow. The river turns silver once more, smooth and inscrutable. The visions fade. The names dissolve. Only the sound remains. The gentle hush of water moving endlessly forward. It is said that when you leave the river's edge, you carry a part of it with you. A small vibration, faint but eternal, pulsing beneath the heart. It is the memory of being known, of being whispered by something older than time. Perhaps the river was never meant to be mapped, or measured, or named. Perhaps it exists only to remind us that forgetting is not the end. That memory, like water, always finds its way home. So when you dream tonight, and the sound of flowing water fills your mind, know this: you are standing once again beside the river that remembered names. The current hums softly, inviting you to listen, and in that silence, if you are still enough, you might hear it, your name, drifting downstream, whispered back to you from the heart of eternity. In a wasteland where even the wind forgets to speak, there stands a gate. It is not marked upon any surviving chart, nor named in any pilgrim's song. It rises from the sands like a single breath of eternity, vast, unmoving, carved from a stone that glows faintly beneath the dying light. At dawn, it is nothing, a ruin swallowed by glare and silence. But when the sun sinks and twilight lingers between gold and blue, the carvings awaken. Lines once lifeless shimmer softly as though warmed by memory. Circles unfold into suns, not one but many, each etched with runes too fine to be read, too fluid to belong to human hands. It is said that these are not symbols, but voices, the language of radiance itself. And when the last beam of daylight trembles across the horizon, the gate exhales. A sound too low to be heard, too sacred to be named, hums through the sand. It feels less like a vibration and more like a remembering. Beneath that sound, the desert stills. Even the grains of dust seem to hang in air, listening. Some believe the gate was never built, that it grew. That once, long before cities rose and crumbled, before even the rivers knew their names, there was a sun whose light could plant memory into stone. And from that memory, this gate was born. The last trace of a civilization that refused to fade, even when time did. Travelers who wander far enough to find it speak of strange warmth in the air, though no fire burns. The stones shimmer, reflecting not the sun above, but a different light, pale, soft, almost lunar, yet pulsing with the rhythm of a heartbeat. In forgotten scrolls, tattered, nameless, dust-fed, there are whispers of an empire that measured days not by the turning of the earth, but by the breath of the stars. They built cities that followed the orbits of suns unseen, and sang hymns to constellations now vanished from our heavens. Tartaria, they called it, a realm between what was and what still might be. It is said their scholars studied not the heavens but the spaces between the stars, the silent corridors where light rested after its journey. They believed each sun had a spirit, and that some spirits burned not in our sky but beyond the veil of knowing. Perhaps this gate is their memorial. Perhaps it opens only when one remembers how to see the suns that no longer shine. There are tales of those who camped beside it. They describe the night as endless, the stars above rearranging themselves, drifting into new constellations that no astronomer could name. And sometimes, they said, the air itself would ripple, as if a veil were being lifted, and for a breathless instant they saw something vast and luminous beyond the threshold. Cities that glowed like constellations, figures made of light moving slowly, reverently, as if performing an eternal ceremony. But when morning came, the vision was gone, leaving behind only a faint warmth on the sand, and the quiet ache of beauty too distant to hold. Some believe the carvings are instructions, a map to the way beyond mortality. Each sun represents a cycle of existence, each symbol a breath of the cosmic rhythm. The largest sun, carved at the center, bears a spiral, a line that never ends, circling inward toward a single point of light. Scholars have tried to trace it. None could reach the center. The spiral seems to shift as it is followed, as if it resists completion. There is a story, faint, half forgotten, that those who trace it with true intention hear a whisper from the stone. Not a word, but a tone, pure, ancient, and so full of sorrow it feels like the echo of creation itself. A sound not meant for ears, but for the soul. It is said one must not linger after hearing it, for those who do begin to fade gently, as if being drawn into the very memory the gate protects. Not consumed, but translated into something the stars might understand. Beneath the gate lies sand, yes, but also something deeper. Glass melted by a fire no storm could cause. Fragments of a structure that once reached into the sky, aligned perfectly with stars that are no longer there. When night falls, the shards reflect strange constellations, mirroring the carvings above, a perfect reflection of the suns that were not ours. Whispers tell us that when Tartaria fell, not by war, but by forgetting and its final priests gathered here, they brought with them scrolls of gold and the ashes of their last great fire. Under a sky without stars, they built the gate, carving into it the memory of every sun they had ever followed. Then they vanished. No graves, no ruins, only the sound. That low hum that still lingers when twilight deepens and the desert holds its breath. Some think they stepped through, not into death but into radiance, leaving behind the weight of earth for a realm made of memory and light. Others say they dissolved into dust, becoming the very shimmer that dances along the horizon when the air bends to heat. Whatever the truth, the gate remains, a wound in time that refuses to close. When you stand before it, beneath the gathering dusk you feel it, that pull in the chest, that strange quiet that falls not upon the ears but upon the mind. It feels as though the world has exhaled, waiting for something to begin again. And in that stillness, if one listens closely, one might hear it, a faint chorus, distant and eternal. Voices woven with starlight calling out names that no human tongue remembers, names of sons, of spirits, of forgotten empires. The river winds beyond the dunes, and even it seems to slow as it nears the gate, as if paying its respects before flowing onward to the edge of memory. Night deepens. The carvings fade to silver, then to ash. The hum subsides, the desert reclaims its breath. Above, the stars settle into their familiar patterns once more. Smaller, colder, mortal. But something lingers. A shimmer upon the horizon. A warmth that does not belong to the sun. Perhaps it is only after images, tricks of the eye. Or perhaps it is what remains of the light that once guided a civilization beyond the threshold of mortality. It is said the gate opens not to travelers of distance, but of remembrance. Those who carry within them a spark of the suns that once burned behind the veil may pass through, unseen, unheard, into the heart of radiance itself. Some who have walked away from the desert say they dream differently afterward. They see skies filled with twin suns, oceans of molten silver, and towers that hum with celestial fire. They wake with tears on their cheeks and a taste of starlight upon their breath. No one returns to the gate twice. For those who have seen it know, It is not a place to find, but a silence to remember. Perhaps when all the world forgets, the gate will close, or perhaps it waits still, patient and eternal, beneath the quiet suns that do not rise and do not set. And maybe, when the last dreamer whispers its name in sleep, it will open once more, not in the desert, but within the soul of whoever remembers. For in the end, the gate of quiet suns is not stone. It is a memory of light, the last sigh of a civilization that learned how to become its own dawn. Beneath the silence, it waits, unbroken, untouched, listening, and somewhere, far beyond the veil of night, the ancient suns still sing, softly, patiently, waiting for us to remember their warmth once more. It is said that once, when the heavens were young and still learning how to burn, a single star drifted too close to the breath of the world. It fell, not like fire but like a whisper, folding through clouds and silence until it met the waiting earth. The sands remember the place where it landed. A plain of silvered glass fused by heat so pure that no wind could ever claim it. In that molten cradle, long before our calendars began their count, the ancient artisans of Tartaria shaped something that was neither stone nor metal. They called it the mirror of falling stars. No one knows what they saw when it first caught the light. Some say the surface shimmered not with reflection, but with remembrance, showing faces that were yet to be born, cities that would one day rise and fall. Others believed it was a doorway, a veil of light through which destiny itself could be glimpsed, though never changed. When twilight fell, it glowed faintly, not from the moon, but from within. And those who approached it said they felt the air tremble, as if the stars themselves were leaning closer to see. It is said that to look into the mirror was to see not the world as it was, but as it dreamed of becoming. In the heart of Tartaria's sacred lands, beyond the rivers that once ran gold in the sun, a temple was raised around the mirror. No doors, no windows, and only a single path of white stone, leading inward like a spiral into silence. The monks who tended it were known as the keepers of the unseen light. They spoke rarely, for they believed words carried weight, and even a single careless sound could fracture a vision not yet born. By night, they sat in stillness before the mirror, watching the play of unseen stars across its surface. Some said they were waiting for a sign. Others whispered that they were learning to listen, not with their ears, but with the soul's forgotten sense. The temple itself was a breathing thing. Its walls were inlaid with shards of celestial stone, each one faintly pulsing with its own heartbeat of light. When the wind passed through the corridors, it sang, low, hollow notes, like the chanting of 1,000 distant worlds. Travelers who stumbled upon the place spoke of strange sensations, the taste of starlight upon the tongue, the feeling of falling upward, the memory of having been there before, and always in the center the mirror, unstill, flawless, waiting. It reflected nothing that stood before it. Not the monks, not the temple, not the face of the curious, only the faint shimmer of unseen constellations no one had ever mapped. Some believed the mirror had learned to reflect not the present, but the possible. Others feared it showed the truth behind illusion, the secret patterns that bind time and spirit into form. And still, the monks kept their vigil, guarding the sacred silence, until the empire began to dim. No one knows how the fall began. Perhaps the stars turned away. Perhaps men forgot to listen. Perhaps the mirror itself grew weary of holding all destinies within its heart. It is said that one night, under a sky heavy with meteors, the air above the temple shimmered, not with flame but with remembrance. A single sound rose, like glass sighing, like breath breaking, and the mirror fractured. It did not shatter as ordinary glass would. Its light unraveled, spiraling outward in 1,000 directions, scattering like seeds across the darkened earth. Those who stood nearby were blinded, though not by brightness, but by visions too vast to bear. They saw towers made of sound, oceans woven of memory, faces that flickered between centuries. Then all went silent. When the dust settled, the temple was gone. Only a hollow field remained, covered in sand that glittered faintly, as though each grain still remembered the stars. The monks, too, had vanished. Only faint impressions of their bodies lingered upon the stone floor, as if they had been lifted away by light itself. Centuries passed. Empires rose and fell, and the name of Tartaria faded like ink left beneath the rain. But in scattered places, on mountaintops and frozen valleys, deep within forgotten monasteries, pieces of the mirror began to appear. A shard discovered in the mountains of the east reflected not the face of the one who held it, but the stars that would rise the following night. Another, found buried in the ruins of a desert shrine, whispered faint songs when touched by moonlight, melodies no instrument could repeat. And there were dreams. Always dreams. Those who slept near the fragments saw visions of cities crowned in light, of voices that spoke in tones older than speech. They woke with tears and could not say why. Some described vast towers spiraling into the heavens, each window glowing with the soul of a different age. Others saw themselves walking through endless halls of glass, each pane reflecting not what was behind them, but who they might have been in another life. It is said that every fragment carries a memory, not of one person, but of all things that ever were and all that might yet be. And sometimes, when a dreamer breathes just right, the fragment breathes with them. Even now, in the quiet of modern nights, the legend endures. Astronomers who study the paths of falling stars speak of flashes that do not behave like meteors, streaks that seem to pause, hovering as though searching for something lost. Some call them remnants of the mirror, still descending, still returning home. And there are those who dream in fragments. They wake knowing names they've never heard, languages they cannot speak, melodies they hum without understanding. Perhaps, as the legend says, these souls are not separate at all, but pieces of a greater whole, scattered long ago by the shattering, somewhere within us. The story breathes, the echo of a mirror that once held all destinies, and broke so the world might remember itself in countless reflections. It is said that when two souls who share the same shard meet, the stars above them pulse, faintly, just once, as if recognizing their reunion. And so, beneath the breath of night, we look upward, countless eyes gazing toward countless stars. But what if it is not we who watch them, but they who remember us? Each falling star, each trembling spark might be a shard returning to its origin. Each flash across the sky a whisper of the mirror recalling what it once was, whole, unbroken, eternal. Perhaps this is why we are drawn to light. Why candles calm us, why dawn feels like forgiveness. Something deep within us remembers that we were once part of the same radiance, the same ancient mirror that reflected not what is, but what might be. When the wind moves gently through the night and the stars shimmer in stillness, listen closely. There is a rhythm, faint and infinite, woven beneath the silence. A pulse that feels like your own heartbeat answering something older. It is said that one day, when the final fragment is found, one not in earth or stone, but in the hearts of those who remember, the mirror will awaken again. Not as glass, not as an object, but as the night itself. For perhaps the mirror never shattered outward at all. Perhaps it shattered inward into us, each of us, carrying a glimmer of what was once whole, each thought, each dream, each longing for the unknown, a reflection of a reflection, echoing the universe's first sigh. And so, the stars keep falling. And so we keep looking up, not searching but remembering. Beneath the hush of eternity, the mirror waits, not in the desert, nor the temple, nor the sky, but here, within the soft chamber of your own remembering, where the universe turns its face toward itself and sees, at last, its own reflection. It begins with a hush, a moon suspended over a landscape of ruin, arches softened by ivy, columns leaning as if weary of the centuries. There is no wind, only the slow exhalation of the earth, breathing in the rhythm of forgotten dreams. Here, beneath silver light, the remnants of empires do not crumble. They rest. Stones glimmer faintly, as though remembering hands that once shaped them. Pools of still water mirror constellations that have no names in our age. It is said that in places such as this, the past does not vanish. It simply folds itself inward, like a sleeper beneath layers of dust and dawn. The air carries a scent of rain on marble, of parchment long closed. Every sound, the distant call of an owl, the drip of dew upon the ground, seems older than it should be. And if you listen closely enough, you may hear it, a pulse beneath the silence. The dream of the world continuing to hum, quietly, patiently, beneath its ruins. It is said that the fall of every empire is not a death, but a deep inhalation, a gathering of breath before the soul of a civilization turns inward, to dream of being born again. Somewhere beyond the reach of calendars and clocks, empires drift in slumber. Their banners are folded into clouds. Their songs hum beneath the surface of rivers. Their languages murmur through the wind that passes over deserts. Tartaria, they whisper, is one such sleeper. Not destroyed, not erased, merely dreaming. Beneath fields where no stone remains, its heartbeat continues, slow and deliberate, like the turning of the moon. Some believe that dreams are the true architecture of civilization. That before a city can rise in stone, it must first exist as vision, as sound, as rhythm, as light flickering within the unseen. If that is so, then perhaps Tartaria was never lost. Perhaps its temples, its vast towers, its symphonies of sacred geometry still exist, suspended in that invisible realm between wakefulness and eternity. In the old scrolls, there are faint drawings, spirals and concentric suns, symbols said to represent the sleep of creation. They suggest that every age must close its eyes so that another may open its own. The fall of empires, then, is not ruin but rotation, the turning of a cosmic wheel too vast for human time to measure. Whispers tell us that when Tartaria entered its slumber, it did so willingly. The final architects laid down their tools beside the golden rivers. The scholars sealed their scrolls, and the towers dimmed one by one, not in despair but in reverence. They understood, perhaps, that knowledge too bright burns the dream it tries to sustain. So they folded it all, wisdom, memory, wonder, into silence, and allowed the earth to cradle it. Somewhere beneath our feet, their lullaby continues, soft harmonies threaded through layers of soil, waiting to be heard again when the world is quiet enough to remember. Imagine walking through these ruins now, through plazas veiled in ivy, through corridors of moonlight and moss. Your footsteps echo not upon stone but through centuries. The air is heavy with something both tender and vast, the breath of all that once was still hovering, still alive in its own slow pulse. Beneath your fingers, a wall hums faintly. You think it might be the wind, and until the rhythm matches your heartbeat, and for a moment it feels as though time itself is breathing with you. It is in moments like these that the separation between then and now dissolves. History ceases to be a tale of past events and becomes something closer to music, a tone, a vibration that moves through the unseen fabric of being. Empires, after all, were never just cities of stone. They were patterns of thought, woven into the very rhythm of the cosmos. When they sleep, those patterns remain, drifting, shimmering, awaiting remembrance. Perhaps this is why we are drawn to ruins. Not out of curiosity, but recognition. We feel, beneath the silence, a stirring, as if some part of us remembers what it was to walk through those gates of light, to speak in the cadences of that forgotten tongue. The ache we feel in the presence of ancient things is not sadness. It is homesickness for the harmony that once bound us to the stars. There is an old legend among wanderers who cross the plains of forgotten lands. They say that on the coldest nights, when the moon is round and the air is still, the ruins sing, not in melody but in vibration, stones trembling ever so slightly, as if the earth hums a memory to itself. The sound is too low to hear, but it settles in the bones, a resonance that quiets even the restless heart. Some have tried to record it, though none ever succeed. The sound exists only between hearing and silence, between night and dawn. It is, they say, the lullaby of the world remembering itself. Perhaps Tartaria was the keeper of that song. A civilization not of conquest, but of communion. A people who built not to defy nature, but to echo it. Their towers aligned to the stars, their machines whispered in harmony with the wind, their cities pulsed in time with the breathing of the earth. If that harmony ever became too perfect, too luminous, perhaps the world itself asked for rest. For even beauty must sleep, or it will shatter beneath its own brilliance. And so Tartaria lay down, not as a fallen empire, but as a dream returning to the source of all dreams. Now, centuries later, we drift among the ruins. We bring our questions, our cameras, our longing, yet the stones answer only in silence. It is not the silence of absence, but of presence too deep to name. When the wind moves through the corridors of memory, it does not speak of loss. It hums, low and rhythmic, like a mother rocking the cradle of creation. Each gust of air carries fragments of forgotten lullabies. Tones of bronze, the scent of rain on marble, the warmth of a sun that no longer burns in our sky. It is said that those who truly listen can hear the heart of the world turning, slow, patient, eternal. For history does not end. It transforms. The empires we think of as lost are merely dreaming in other forms. In our thoughts, in our art, in the quiet yearning that moves us toward beauty we cannot explain. Perhaps the cities of the ancients still rise, not in stone, but in us. Every act of kindness, every moment of wonder is a rebuilding of that invisible architecture. And every silence we enter, every pause between heartbeats, is a return to that sacred stillness where the empires rest. Listen now. Can you hear it? That faint murmur beneath the turning of the stars? It is the breath of civilization sleeping, the pulse of a universe that never truly forgets itself. The moon passes over the ruins, and for an instant, everything gleams. Not as memory, not as myth, but as a promise. Perhaps Tartaria still dreams within us. Perhaps all empires do. In that final hush, we close our eyes and the earth exhales. The wind slows, the stars dim, and in the distance the song continues. Soft, endless, sacred, guiding us toward that quiet threshold where history becomes silence, and silence at last becomes home. It begins in silence. Not the silence of emptiness, but of waiting, deep, deliberate, ancient. A veil of dust drifts through the air, soft as breath, lit by a pale beam of light that slips through a broken archway. Below the ground, far beneath the noise of the living world, there lies a rhythm, faint, steady, patient, the breath beneath the stone. Somewhere, a cathedral has collapsed into its own shadow. Its towers, once drawn toward heaven, now bow toward the soil. But even here, among ruins drowned in centuries, something endures. It is not sound, nor echo, nor ghost, but pulse, the quiet respiration of a world that refuses to be forgotten. It is said that those who have walked these buried corridors have felt it, a vibration that hums through the soles of their feet, as though the earth itself remembers the pattern of creation. Beneath the shattered marble, beneath mosaics blurred by time, a geometry continues to dream, spirals that never end, lines that trace the invisible breath of the cosmos. The stones are not dead, they are sleeping, and in their sleep they breathe. Archaeologists call it structure, historians call it architecture. But the old ones, the keepers of myth and silence, they called it meditation made solid. It is said the builders did not carve these tunnels merely to shelter or to hide. They carved to listen. Each stroke of chisel, each measured echo of hammer against rock was a prayer, a heartbeat in rhythm with the earth. They sought not to shape the stone, but to commune with it, to find within its dense stillness the same breath that moves through stars. When one descends into these tunnels, the world above dissolves. The air grows cooler, softer, almost liquid. Shadows move differently here. Time itself seems to slow, not stopping but folding in upon itself, like the turning of a great spiral. Symbols are etched along the walls, circles within circles, stars that bloom into geometry, lines that flow like rivers toward a vanishing point. To those who rush, they mean nothing. But to those who linger, those who breathe in rhythm with the dark, the symbols begin to hum. Whispers tell us the builders spoke not in words, but in frequencies, tones of light and stone. They understood that the earth has its own language, spoken in vibration and silence, and so they built temples not upon the earth, but within it, structures designed to echo the planet's own breath. Perhaps that is why, long after their empire faded, long after their names were swallowed by dust and sea, the tunnels still live, even now. When one stands in the heart of those buried halls, a tremor rises, gentle as a sigh. The walls seem to exhale, and if you are still enough, you will feel it against your skin, the slow, patient heartbeat of the world. Some believe these chambers were meant as observatories, mapping not stars, but sound. For sound too leaves constellations, in air, in water, in stone. The ancients, it is said, could see this harmony. They built not for grandeur, but alignment, for balance between what breathes above and what dreams below. Each column was a prayer. Each curve a gesture of devotion, each spiral a reminder that nothing ends, that every fall is only a turn inward, a descent into silence before rebirth. When the empire was young, Its people gathered in these subterranean cathedrals not to speak but to listen. They would sit for hours in the dark, hands upon the stone, hearts beating in unison with the pulse beneath. It is said they could feel the tides of the planet move through them, a communion so complete that breath and earth became one. To walk those corridors was to walk within the body of creation itself. But time, as it always does, began to erode the edges of wonder. The halls fell empty. The builders vanished, and the cities above forgot what lay below. Yet the breath endured, slow, rhythmic, eternal. For what is sacred does not die. It waits, imagine it now, a labyrinth of stone, illuminated by the thin blue glow of a buried moon. You walk slowly, your footsteps muffled by centuries of dust. The air trembles faintly, though nothing moves. Every surface bears the trace of hands that once understood stillness better than we ever will. Hands that did not rush to finish but lingered to listen. Hands that carved with reverence, knowing that stone, when treated gently, remembers. It is said that deep within the labyrinth, there lies a single chamber, round, seamless, perfect in proportion. No torch has burned there for 1,000 years. Yet those who have entered speak of light, a soft radiance that seems to come from the stone itself, as if the walls are breathing out the remnants of ancient dawns. Scholars call it illusion, but the old texts say otherwise. They say the chamber is alive, a heart still beating long after the body has turned to dust. If one listens long enough, the hum of the earth rises to meet the rhythm of one's own pulse, until the two become indistinguishable. Breath aligns with breath, silence becomes sound, and in that fragile unity the listener glimpses something eternal, not knowledge but remembrance. When the empire fell silent, the stone did not. It continued its slow respiration, invisible but unbroken. Centuries passed and the cities above it crumbled. Forests grew. Ocean shifted. But beneath it all the tunnels still breathed, their rhythm steady as the turning of the moon. Some believe that this breath is the memory of creation itself, the same force that once stirred the first tide, the same whisper that coaxed fire from darkness. Others say it is a warning, a reminder that the earth lives and listens, that even our greatest empires are but dust upon its skin. Yet perhaps it is something gentler, a lullaby from the deep, a promise that nothing truly ends, only changes form. Even now, when one presses an ear to the cool stone of an ancient wall, they might hear it, the faint exhale, the heartbeat beneath silence. It does not speak in words. It speaks in rhythm, a pulse that matches our own, as if the earth and we are breathing each other into being. And perhaps that is the secret the builders knew, that to carve the earth was to shape one's own soul, that to listen to silence was to hear the universe remembering itself. So, we stand at the threshold of ruin and dream, listening to what cannot be named. The tunnels stretch endlessly, vanishing into shadow, their breath still steady, still sure. Above, the stars turn like slow machinery, their light falling softly upon forgotten cities. Below, the earth sighs, a sound older than time, older than history, older than us. It is the breath beneath the stone, the sound of a world that once dreamed in perfect symmetry, and perhaps still does. So we listen, we close our eyes, and the breath becomes our own, slow, patient, eternal. It begins not with a sound, but with its absence, the kind of stillness that arrives after the final note of a forgotten song, when air itself holds its breath, listening, remembering. In the farthest corners of night, where starlight dissolves into dream, there is said to be a veil, thin, trembling, almost invisible. It hangs between what was and what remains, woven from memory, dust, and longing. Beyond it, whispers the old belief, lies the realm where forgotten empires drift like smoke upon celestial winds. Their names no longer matter. Their histories melt into light. It is the place where Tartaria, and all things that once were, continue to hum, not as monuments of stone, but as vibration, as memory, as the soft pulse that keeps the universe awake. The ancients called it the echo beyond the veil, a resonance that carries through time, long after the source of the sound has vanished. Some say if you listen closely in the deep hours before dawn, you can hear it, not with the ears but with the soul, a murmur, like the tide retreating across the stars or the faint sigh of a dream that refuses to end. It is said that all stories end in echo. But perhaps they also begin there. Once long ago, though long ago may only be another illusion, Tartaria stood at the center of the world's forgotten symmetry. Its towers mirrored constellations. Its rivers flowed in patterns mapped by the moon. Its architects carved not merely for beauty, but for resonance and to let every wall, every corridor, sing softly with the breath of creation. They believed that every civilization leaves behind not ruins but frequency, that when we look upon the remnants of a lost world, what we truly see are frozen waves of sound, songs solidified into matter. Now those frequencies drift, faint, like starlight, too old to name. They travel across oceans of silence, through the folds of dream, reaching us not as knowledge but as ache. Perhaps that is why even now when we speak of Tartaria, we do not speak of a city or an empire. We speak of a feeling, a pull, a longing so ancient it hums beneath our heartbeat. Whispers tell us that this longing is the echo itself, the resonance of what once was, vibrating still within the fibers of our being. And maybe we carry fragments of that sound inside us, like dust from an old cathedral clinging to the folds of time. When we dream of golden spires and endless horizons, of languages we have never learned yet somehow understand, perhaps it is not imagination but recognition. The remembering of a frequency that once belonged to us. The veil, they say, is not a wall. It is a mirror. It does not separate worlds, it reflects them. Stand before it long enough and you may see not the ruins of Tartaria, but your own reflection. Softened, celestial, unfamiliar. Behind your eyes flickers the faint shimmer of another life, another age, where the air was golden and thought moved like wind across water. Perhaps it is there, in the shimmer of that reflection, that we glimpse the truth, that Tartaria was never merely a place upon the earth, but a state of being, a harmony between matter and spirit, between breath and stone, between human and infinite. Some say it fell, others whisper it ascended, but both may be true, for what ascends in spirit must fall from sight. The veil only hides what the waking eye cannot yet remember. Beyond it, all that has ever been continues to move in slow, sacred circles. The empires of yesterday breathe beneath the constellations, their dreams woven into the fabric of time. And when we pause, truly pause, we can feel them moving through us. Imagine standing in an empty field at dusk. The horizon dissolves into a pale veil of mist. No birds, no wind, only the hum of existence itself. And then faintly you sense it, that rhythm beneath everything. The same one that trembles in ancient stones, that curls through forgotten chants, that rises and falls with your own breath. That is the echo. That is the voice of all that came before, still speaking, still seeking, still singing us into remembrance. Perhaps Tartaria did not die, but transformed into that vibration, that haunting symmetry between silence and sound. Even the stars, it is said, listen to that rhythm. They mark their paths by its pulse, circling endlessly, their light tracing the shape of what once was divine order. And we, wanderers of the present, catch faint fragments of that cosmic music in dreams, in déjà vu, in the stillness before sleep. It is the breath of a forgotten age reminding us that we, too, are part of an unfinished song. Some say the veil is closing, that with every century the hum of remembrance grows fainter. But others believe the opposite, that the veil grows thinner, as if time itself is remembering how to listen. Perhaps that is why stories such as this one rise again, from dust, from shadow, from the gentle hunger of our own hearts. They come not to inform, but to awaken. It is said the veil cannot be pierced by knowledge, only by stillness. It opens only for those who walk in quiet, who breathe with patience, who let go of wanting to find, and instead allow themselves to be found. For the veil is not out there. It lies within, between our thoughts and our silence, between our waking and our dreaming. When we close our eyes and listen, truly listen, we begin to hear the echo again, that ancient vibration returning, carrying the memory of what once was whole. And so we arrive at the edge of knowing where words grow faint, and only breath remains. The night wraps itself around us soft as silk, silvered by distant stars. All stories, it seems, must end here, where sound becomes silence, and silence becomes understanding. Tartaria fades not into nothingness, but into light, the kind that has no source, the kind that glows from within the folds of being. Perhaps it was never meant to be found, only felt. Perhaps it was never lost, only waiting, as echoes do, want for someone to listen again. And as we listen, the question returns, gentle as a sigh. Was Tartaria lost? Or are we the ones still finding our way back? Beneath the moon's quiet gaze, the answer drifts beyond reach like smoke carried by the tide of stars. But that is how all true mysteries live. Not in revelation, but in the tender hum between wonder and forgetting. The veil trembles one last time. The echo softens, and then only silence. But in that silence, if you listen long enough, you will hear it again, the faint music of eternity, rising, falling, breathing through the ages. The story ends, and yet it does not, for somewhere beyond the veil the echo continues, calling us softly home.